or obtaining a son. Horse sacrifice is called Asvamedha. Actually, the Asvamedha sacrifice is done by kings to prove their reigning power. And they send a horse to different kingdoms around their kingdom or the whole world. And if the horse passes unobstructed throughout the kingdom, then that's a sign that the king of that smaller kingdom will pay tribute to the king who's doing the horse sacrifice. But if the king seizes the horse, then there's a fight to see which kingdom and which army is stronger. He then, with the advice of his counselors, decided to perform Asvamedha sacrifice and called together his spiritual guides with Vasistha at their head. So Vasistha Muni was Dasarath's guru, chief guru, and he had other saintly persons like Vasistha who advised him. Then the king replied, "The Brahmins approved of the king's intention and said in a body, O king, since with the object of obtaining an offspring thou hast decided, or you have decided so nobly, you will surely get sons after your mind." So the saints approve and the gurus approve of his intention, and they say you will be successful. Every idea begins in the mind. Whether you're going to create a program, or you're going to create a film, or you want to build a house, or whatever you want to do, it all begins with an idea in the mind. Now the difference between the materialists and the devotees is the devotees always can get their idea validated by a bona fide guru or gurus, Siksha and Diksha gurus. Is this a good idea, Maharaj? What do you think? Should I go ahead and do this? So this is from most ancient times that one always asks permission of the guru before doing something, especially something big like an Asvamedha sacrifice. Then the king replied, "Then procure the necessary sacrificial articles according to the instruction of my spiritual preceptors, and let loose a horse guarded by a competent person, and one of the chief family priests prepare the sacrificial ground on the north bank of the Sarayu." So Datharath's city was built on the bank of a river, the river Sarayu. The ceremony cannot be celebrated by every king. Particular care should be taken that it may not be defective on account of any omission. So it costs a lot of money and a lot of preparation to do the Asvamedha sacrifice. And in order for the sacrifice to be successful, every detail has to be correct. The Brahmins then embraced the monarch and retired with his permission. Monarch is another word for king. So the Brahmins embraced King Dasarath and then went on their ways after asking his permission. Hearing all about the sacrifice, the king's charioteer Sumantra said, "Listen, my dear king, to the story of old, or to an old story which I have myself heard. The saint Sanat Kumar foretold how in your ancient line, or your ancient dynasty, a son would be born. The seer said, Kasyapa has a son named Vibandaka, and he will get a son called Rishashringa. He will be brought up with woodland deer and will pass his days in the woods and will know nothing except following the desires of his father. It is said, O king, that he will practice 2 modes of brahmacharya and spend some time by the sacrificial fire. By this time, a king called Lomapada will sit on the throne of the Ungas. But for the king's sin, plague and drought will visit the land, and the king will ask the priests to find out some remedy for it. The Brahmanas then will advise him to bring Vibhandaka's son, Rishashringa, by any means, and to bestow his daughter, Santa, with due honors on him. In other words, get him married to his daughter. Hearing this, the king will ask his priests to bring Rishashringa to him. But they will beg to be excused from fear of Vibhandaka. Then they will devise many crafty plots. Then it will be planned that young women, expert in all sorts of enticements, will be sent attired as sannyasis. In other words, they'll be dressed as sannyasis to beguile the holy hermit with amorous wiles. In other words, to beguile him with affection. And the unsuspecting youth, seduced by them, will leave his father's cottage. In other words, Vibhandaka protected his son Rishashringa by never letting him see a woman, even his own wife. In other words, Rishashringa didn't know what a woman is. He had only seen men his whole life. So, and his father was protecting him, and therefore, in order for this king Lomapada to get Rishashringa in his kingdom and to marry his daughter, they had to figure out a way to separate the boy from his father. And they thought the best way to do it is we'll get young, beautiful women dressed as sannyasis, because he doesn't know what a woman is, to go and trick him through their affection and get him to leave the father's ashram and come into King Lomapada's kingdom, and then convince him to get married. Why did they want him in the kingdom? Because Lomapada had committed some sinful activity previously, and therefore his kingdom was besieged by plague and drought. So whenever there's a drought, whenever there's plague, meaning a serious viral type of disease that's affecting people, it's a sign that the ruler of that kingdom is sinful. And therefore, all the people are suffering because their leader is a sinful man or has committed some great sin in the past. And the only way to counteract that was suggested by the priests and Brahmins, that you should get someone who's never committed any sin and who's trained as an expert Brahmin to perform the fire sacrifice after the successful Ashvamedha, or horse, has been sent around to different kingdoms and they all accept to pay tribute. Then we perform this very expensive and complicated sacrifice by a pure person who's never sinned himself. So the only person they knew was this Rishashringa, who had never committed any sin before and who was completely innocent. Okay, so then when Rishashringa will leave his peaceful retreat and come to the city, the troubles of the king will come to an end, and Rishashringa will be married to Santa. Now I have related what Sanat Kumar had communicated before. King Dasarath then exclaimed in joy, "Tell me how they brought the holy hermit to Angas." So Dasarath is hearing this ancient history of Rishashringa, and it piques his interest. Piquing his interest means it grabs his interest, and is very, very fascinated to know how they tricked Rishashringa to leave the ashram of the father and what happened. So you see, if there's one pure devotee or saintly person in a place, that place becomes auspicious. But if the ruler of that place is sinful, that place becomes inauspicious. And the only way to overcome it is by bringing in very pure persons to live in that kingdom, and wherever pure devotees live, they instruct the people also how to become pure devotees. Thus, asked by the king, Sumanta replied. So now Sumanta, one of the advisors of Dasrat, is continuing the story. The priest said to Lomapada, Rishishringa has been brought up in the woods and is engaged in religious austerities, and is quite ignorant of women and sensual pleasures. In other words, sense gratification. Let therefore most beautiful girls be sent to him, and they will seduce him hither. In other words, unwittingly, he will associate with beautiful women, but they'll be dressed like sannyasis. He'll think they're men because he doesn't know what a woman is, and they'll be dressed like sannyasis. And they will hug each other and they'll talk, but he'll be actually associating very closely with women, and very beautiful women. And and because there's a saying, man is like butter and woman is like fire. When the butter approaches the fire, what happens? Huh? It'll what? The butter what? Okay, when you talk, don't go like this, because I can't hear what you're saying. Take your hands off your mouth. It doesn't burn, but it melts, right? Okay, so if he closely associates with these beautiful women, even though they're dressed like sannyasis, something will happen to him. Nature will work its way. And he will be attracted to them. And if they invite him to come with them, he won't know why, but he'll just go with them because he's attracted. Then, to allure the youthful hermit, the bright young girls, with their scented tresses, meaning their hair, tied with floral wreaths with flowers in their hair, began to sing and dance and feigned all amorous things. Feigned means pretended to be very affectionate. The whole forest became reverberated with their music, anklets, silvery chime, and sweet cuckoo notes. Cuckoo is a bird that sings sweetly. So they were singing like that and making the sweet sounds. And when they approached Rishishringa's ashram, singing and dancing, Rishishringa gazed on them in wild surprise. He couldn't believe his eyes. And he felt a hitherto unfelt strong impulse. In other words, he felt something, some strong attraction to these sannyasis, but he didn't understand why. And it was overwhelming. And he said, my father is holy Kashyapa's son, Vibhandaka, and I am called Rishishringa. Our hermitage is close by. Please come to our cottage. I welcome you, gentle beauties. So he couldn't take his eyes off these beautiful sannyasis and their lovely forms. And he had a strange, what's called longing, which arose in his mind. And he invited them to please come. He didn't want to be separated from them. He was attracted to them. They, meaning the young girls dressed as sannyasis, gladly went to his cottage, and Rishishringa received them most warmly. He gave them water to wash their feet with, and offered them fruits and roots to eat. The young girls then broke forth with a merry laugh. We too have dainty fruits in store. Please taste the produce of our forest. So they brought some very delicious fruits for Rishishringa. And they were pretending to be like sannyasis like him, living in the forest and eating fruits and roots. Then they gave him many luscious things, looking like fruits. So sometimes people make sandesh, but they decorate it looking like a flower. Or like our ladies, they decorate cupcakes, but they make them look like flowers by putting the icing on it. So that these girls did the same thing. They didn't actually bring fruits. They brought very sweet tasting, sweets, but they looked like flowers or fruits. Then they gave him many luscious things looking like fruits. Then the laughing damsels threw their arms around his neck and whispered in his ears heavy tales of love, while their sumptuous breasts and delicate limbs pressed against the youthful hermit. Then the wily girls took a hasty leave, saying that they were afraid of his ascetic father. When they were gone, Rishishringa felt distressed by their absence. He seemed to be possessed by a longing love and roamed about the forest in restless nights. Well, this is what happens when you fall in love. You become miserable. You think, oh no, it's just the opposite. But actually, because of the desire to always be with the person that you love, and if there's any separation, you become very, very distressed. And the next day, this is called material love, not spiritual love. Spiritual love is different. And the next day, Rishishringa eagerly came to the spot where he had encountered the beautiful girls previously. As soon as those wily girls saw Ribandaka's son, they came forward and said, "O Brahman, come to our cottage. There are various fruits and roots which you will have to your heart's content." So now they're inviting him. First, he invited them to his place, and they came. Then he sees them again the next day. They left, but then they came back. And now they're inviting him to come with them. So he passed an entire day he passed an entire night without seeing them. And during that time, he felt very troubled. And he didn't feel good because he became attached to them. Rishishringa felt tempted, and he was thus vanquished. In other words, he had never done anything before in his 16 years. He was 16 years old. Without asking his father. But his father was absent temporarily from the ashram. And the girls are inviting him to come with them. And because of his attraction to them, he consented. He said, okay. Because he was won over by their tricks. They gave him very nice sweets. They gave him hugs. They sang and danced. They, were very nice to him. And he was always living alone or with his father. So he had never met such attractive people before. So he became attracted to him. As soon as Rishishringa was brought, Indra poured forth plenty of showers, enlivening the earth and the spirits of men. In other words, as soon as he entered the kingdom of Lomapada, it started to rain. Because previously there was a very long drought. Nothing was growing. Everyone was very distressed. That's what happens when a pure devotee sets foot on a place. Like, for example, Prabhupada was in Seattle in 1968, opened the first temple. Well, because Prabhupada was here, you can consider this a holy place. Because a pure devotee set foot here. A pure devotee can purify even the most contaminated place simply by his presence, because by his presence he'll chant Hare Krishna, he'll offer food to Krishna and distribute it, and so forth. The king received Rishishringa with due honors and conferred on him his daughter Santa. Thus honored by the king, Rishishringa passed his days in the city with his beloved wife Santa. In other words, Valmiki is telling the story very quickly. A lot of things happened between the time he left his father's ashram, came to Lomapada's kingdom. There's much more to this story, but it's told in a very short way here. But in the end, he marries the king's daughter, and he stays permanently in the kingdom of Romapada. Now, Sumanta continues to tell some more things to King Dasarath. He says, "Listen, O foremost monarch, I shall tell what Sanat Kumar, the best of gods, has said." Sanat Kumar is not a god, but he is one of the four Kumaras, and the four Kumaras are sons of Brahma, and they're extremely exalted saints, and they're all pure devotees of Krishna. Thus resumes Sumanta. In Ikshwaku's line, there will be born a pious king named Dasarat. So now Sanat Kumar is predicting many thousands of years previous to Dasarat what's going to happen in the future. Because Sanat Kumar is what's called Trikalagya. He can see into the future. He can see into the past, and he knows perfectly what's happening in the present. So Trikala means he sees the three times of life: past, present, and future. He knows what's going to happen in the future before it happens, right? Who becomes Trikalagya? Only the greatest saints and pure devotees become Trikalagya. They develop this power given to them by Krishna to see the past, present, and future. And in the Ikshwaku line, there will be born a pious king named Dasarat, beautiful in appearance and true to his vows. He will be a friend of the king of Angas, who will have a virtuous daughter named Santa. At one time, the famous King Dasarat will repair to him and thus speak to him, "O noble one, I am without any issue, and I wish to perform a sacrifice for it. Let Santa's husband take charge of that sacrifice. Please request him for it." So even though this history of Rishasingha is ancient, even to King Dasarat, Sanat Kumar predicted that Dasarat would go to King Lomapad and request that Rishasingha come to his kingdom and perform the sacrifice for the Ashvamedha horse sacrifice for him, so that he could have a son. In other words, a Brahmin who does a Vedic yajna should be a pure devotee. Otherwise, the yajna or the sacrifice will not be successful. Hearing this, Lomapada, after thinking over the matter, will make over Rishasingha with his wife and children for the intended ceremony. In other words, Lomapad, when he gets the request from Dasarat, he'll immediately send Rishasingha and his wife and children to perform the sacrifice. After bringing Rishasingha, King Dasarat, glad to heart, will make preparations for the sacrifice, and with supplicating prayer will invite the best of Brahmanas to conduct the ceremony, and from that Pureshti sacrifice, 4 sons of great prowess will be born unto him. So it's predicted that Dasarat will have 4 sons, and that Rishasingha will oversee the sacrifice, and it will be successful. Thus has prophesied Sanat Kumar. Prophecy is when a saintly person sees into the future and tells people what's going to happen. So here, Sumanta is telling King Dasarat what was predicted by Sanat Kumar previously. Dasarat was exceedingly delighted at these words of Sumanta. Dasarat then looked to Vasistha for advice, who gave his glad consent to Sumantra's words. So again, Dasarat doesn't do anything unless his guru approves of it. This is the proper position for a disciple, to always get validation and approval from the guru. Then, whatever the disciple does has a very good chance of being successful because it has the blessing of his gurus. Okay, quiet. Listen. Dasarat stopped at Angas. Angas is the name of the country where Lomapad is king, for 7 or 8 days. Then, after stating the object of his visit, addressing Lomapada, he said, "Let your daughter with her husband come to my city to help my sacrifice, which I intend to perform there." Hearing this, his friend Lomapada requested his son-in-law Rishasingha to repair to Ayodhya with his wife, and Rishasingha readily consented to his father-in-law's proposal. Then Dasarat and Lomapada clasped or hugged each other, or shook hands and embraced each other in joy. After this, Dasarat sent out set out for Ayodhya with Rishishringa, the foremost of Brahmanas, and sent a messenger for a public celebration. Let the whole city be decorated, let it be perfumed with sweet incense, let the streets be well watered, and let gay banners flutter in the air. All the people awaited his return in eager joy, and as soon as the king entered the city with Rishishringa and his company, the whole city welcomed him with the blares of conch shells and drums. The king then took him inside his palace and accorded him due honors with rites of hospitality. In consequence of Rishishringa's presence, the king thought that his object had been gained, and the ladies of the palace were all pleased at the sight of large-eyed Santa. Thus honored by all, Rishishringa and his wife passed their days. So if the Brahmins are happy in the kingdom, then all auspicious things will happen. After some, when the sweet spring season appeared, King Dasarath thought of performing his sacrifice. So this is also the spring season right now. So it's a very auspicious time because nature comes alive again. Things sprout and flowers appear, and then there are fruits, and so it's a happy time. The Brahmin said to the king, "Let it be so. Order for necessary provisions. Loose the horse and prepare the sacrificial ground on the north bank of the Saraya." So they're preparing the sacrifice. They let the horse loose to travel through different kingdoms and collect taxes. Thereafter, King Dasarath, addressing Sumanta, said, "O Sumanta, summon Brahmins and priests versed in the Vedas and Vedangas, Suyagya, Vamdeva, Javali, Kashyapa, and the priest Vasista." Thereupon Sumanta bestirred himself and summoned all those versed in the Vedas. When they came, Dasaratha, after showing due honors to them, said, "Having no son, I have no happiness in life. Hence, I intend to perform an Asvamedha sacrifice, and by the blessings of the holy Rishishringa, I am sure I shall gain my object." The Brahmins fully agreed to his words. The king was greatly delighted at their approval, and he cheerfully asked his men to make preparations for the sacrifice in accordance with the directions of the Brahmins. Then the Brahmins blessed him, saying, "May your desire be crowned with success." Dasarath then bowed to them in profound respect and hurried to meet his queens. And when they heard about the possibility of sons, their lotus-like faces brightened in joy as lilies at the end of the forest. Again, when the spring appeared after a year, so 1 year goes by in which they're making the preparations, the Brahmins are preparing for the sacrifice, the horse is traveling around, collecting taxes and so forth. The king was anxious for the birth of his sons. He resolved to perform the sacrifice without further delay. He then addressed Vasista, "O Reverend Sir, please make all preparations strictly according to the injunctions of the Shastras. Kindly see there may not be any impediment to it. You are my best friend and guide. You will have to take entire charge of the sacrifice." And Vasista, his guru, says, "I shall do as you desire." Then Vasista summoned Brahmins well versed in sacrificial things, wise and aged people, architects, capable servants, carpenters, diggers, astrologers, artists, actors, dancers, learned, and people of good character for the sacrifice of King Dasarath. So if you want something good to happen, you need to be surrounded by good people. If you want something bad to happen, then surround yourself with bad people, and something bad will happen. See? So therefore, tell me who your friends are. I can tell you who you are. So if you have bad friends, I know that you're going to become a bad person. And if you have good friends, I know that you're going to become a good person. Therefore, who you associate determines in a large measure who you are. So let's repeat that. Who you associate with will determine who you are. So if you're associating with people who always do nonsense, then what will you become? Nonsense. And if you associate with people who always do good sense, who will you become? Good sense, right? So association is the most important thing. In order to be able to chant Hare Krishna always, You have to associate with people who do what? Always chant. If you associate with people who don't chant, what will you do? You'll stop chanting. So if you want to chant Hare Krishna always, you have to associate with people who are always chanting Hare Krishna. So then Vasishtha ordered bricks by the thousands, many, many thousands, and raised spacious structures for the accommodation of kings and princes. So people, all the kings of the world are going to come to this sacrifice. So they need housing. It's just like the World Olympics. Whenever they usually announce that a city is going to sponsor the Olympics, maybe 10 years ahead of time, because it takes 10 years to prepare for the Olympics, because there's going to be a big influx of people, and you need stadiums, and you need tracks, race tracks, and different things. So it costs a huge amount of money, and it takes a long time to prepare. In the same way, to do the Ashwamedha sacrifice requires a huge amount of money, and it requires a lot of infrastructure to be able to accommodate all those people, and for the sports events that takes place. Or in this case, it's not a sports event, it's the grandiose sacrifice. Now don't forget, this is happening in Treta Yuga over 1.7 million years ago. So the Yuga Dharma in Satya Yuga was meditation. The Yuga Dharma in Treta Yuga was gigantic sacrifices in which they would offer hundreds of tons of ghee into the fire. And imagine what amount of wood. Every day of the fire would consume a huge forest. And they needed gold utensils. So, and how many people are coming? Millions of people would attend. So you'd have to feed everyone. So it cost a huge amount of money. And you had to give charity to the Brahmins. So they would give decorated cows and money to the Brahmins. So you see, it required a lot of money and a lot of organization. Many poor and low-class people were expected to attend the sacrifice. Beautiful huts should be raised for them. In other words, the Brahmins that came had to live in nice houses during the sacrifice. And the sacrifice wasn't one day. It would go on for a long time. And you had to feed everyone. And then many other people would come. So they needed accommodation also. It's just like the Kumbh Mela. Right now, the Kumbh Mela is taking place in Ujjain, India. How many people will come to the Kumbh Mela, which lasts about 1 month? Huh? Usually 40 million to 70 million people come. How many people go to Mecca on pilgrimage? Maybe 2-3 million people. So you see, the Kumbh Mela is much bigger than any other spiritual festival. It's the biggest festival in the world. You have 40 to 70 million. And once every 144 years, they have a gigantic Kumbh Mela. They get 1 or 200 million people. Yeah. And then once every 12 years, they have a relatively big, Mahakumbh Mela, where they get 80 to 100 million people. And then a regular Kumbh Mela, like the one that's going on in Ujjain, they get between 40 million and 70 million people. Yeah. In a matter of, I think, 15 to 30 days. I'm not sure how long it lasts. So the Ashwamedha sacrifice was bigger than that. It's like bigger than a Mahakumbh Mela. Because people from all over the world come. And because at that time, King Dasharatha was the king of the entire world. There was one world government. And he says, whatever you may give to them, you must give it with proper modesty, so that they may think themselves respectfully entertained. So he's saying some low-class, poor people will come also, and we have to also give them in charity something. But be very careful how you give it. Give it with modesty. Give it with humility. Don't say, hey, you take this, that's not the right way. Because you'll insult, even though they're poor people, if you don't give it with humility, they'll be insulted by it. Because you're not giving it in a proper way. So whatever we do in life, whatever we give away or whatever we speak, it should always be respectfully, done respectfully. Otherwise, people won't like you. Okay, raise your hand if you want to be liked. Right. So what do you have to do if you want to be liked? Yes. Do you do good things to your sister? All the time? Not all the time, sometimes, yes. Well, that's the problem right there. If you want your sister to do good things to you, you have to do good things all the time to her, not just some of the time. Otherwise, some of the time she'll do good things to you, and then some of the time she'll do bad things to you. So you determine how other people will relate to you by your behavior. Now, if someone does something bad, how do you relate to that? Yes. Something good. Exactly right. Exactly. Somebody does something bad to you. The way to return that is by doing something good. Now, some people would say, well, somebody does something bad to me, then I do something bad to them. Is that a good thing to do? No. You teach people by your example. So here, the king is telling, Dashrath is telling that whatever you may give to the poor people and low-class people, you must give it with proper modesty so that they may think themselves respectfully entertained. Don't neglect or despise anyone through greed or fits of temper. Those laborers and artisans who will remain engaged in the sacrificial work should also be treated with kindness. For those who work for wages, if they receive beyond their expectations, accomplish their work satisfactorily and leave nothing unfinished or ill done. So act with discretion and kindness. Now, this is big advice. In other words, even if you're paying someone to work for you, always be very kind to them so that they feel what? They receive beyond their expectations. If they feel like that, then they'll accomplish the work. They'll do the work not only satisfactorily, but they'll leave nothing unfinished or ill done. So, when a person is not treated nicely and you ask them to do something, they have to do it. Right? Because they're not treated nicely. But if you treat them better than they expect, then usually they'll do a very good job. Like one time, there was this man, he went to a steam bath. You know what a steam bath is? It's a place where people go to take a bath, but part of the bath is heat, so that you sweat. So when you sweat, all the pores of your skin open up, and then when you wash yourself with soap and water, you get really clean, and then toxins from inside the body come out also with the sweating. So when this man went, he was given slippers, but the slippers were old and torn. He was given a towel, but the towel was dirty. And he was given a soap, but the soap had hairs on it from a previous person. So he noticed all that, and he could see that they were not very interested in him. So when he left, on leaving, he left them a big tip. Big tip. You know what a tip is, right? He gave them a gift of a lot of money, and he left. So the next time he came, they gave him a new soap, a new towel, and new slippers. And they kept bringing him ice water, and they gave him a free massage and everything. So they were expecting that when he leaves, the first time they came, they treated him like dirt, and he gave a big tip. So they were thinking if they treat him with respect like this and give him first-class treatment, the tip they'll get will be huge. But you know what he gave them? 1 penny. And they were like looking at it, like they couldn't believe it. And he smiled and he said, "This is for the first time I came. And the first time I gave you the tip for the second time I came." You see. So he taught them to treat people nicely all the time, right? Okay. And that's what King Janak is telling. That's what Dasarath is telling his, people helping him. You should treat people nicely all the time, and not because don't treat the poor people bad and the rich people good. Treat them all equally nicely. Then he says, I'm going to read this again. Those laborers and artisans who will remain engaged in sacrificial work should also be treated with kindness. For those who work for wages, if they receive beyond their expectations, accomplish their work satisfactorily. So now you're building a house, right, Prabhu? You're building a house. So how are you going to treat the workers? No, beyond expectation. That was beyond expectation. One day, it should be every day. That's good. Well, for those who work for wages, if they receive beyond their expectations, so if they say, we're working for $25 an hour, but when the work is when half done, you pay them and tell them, look, I want you guys to do a good job. I'm going to give you $30 an hour. That's beyond expectation. Goes, what? Really? You talked us down to 25. You were like squeezing us, but now you say 30. So they'll do a better job. The rest of the job they'll do as good as they can, right? And hopefully, right? Thus, Vasistha concluded, thereupon, some came forward and said, we have done everything according to your instructions, and nothing has been left undone, and what you now say will be carried out to the letter, because he's treating them better than they expected. Therefore, they're going an extra mile to make sure he's satisfied. All right. Then Vasistha, summoning Sumanta, said, go and invite all the great rulers, $25 and the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. Invite cordially the people of all provinces. Go yourself to Janaka, the truthful and valiant king of Mithila, and he is a very old ally of ours. I have first mentioned his name. Then go to amiable Kesiraj, a man of character and of great virtues. Then bring with all honor the king's father-in-law, the pious ruler of Kekaya, with his son, the king's friend Lomapada, the chief of Angas, the powerful ruler of Koshala, and the highly accomplished and martial king of Magda. According to the wishes of Dasarath, also invite the rulers of East, the kings of Sindhu, Saurvirya, and Saurashtra. Summon all the rulers who are friendly to us to attend the sacrifice with their retinues or their followers. You now send envoys to them according to the instructions of the king. So he's sending them all over the world to bring all the people all the important kings. And if the king comes, then their armies come. If the army comes, then the wives and children come, and basically everyone from all the kingdoms are going to come, and they have to treat everyone with respect. So, to give that many gifts and to feed that many people for, let's say, a month or more, it costs a huge amount of money. Then Sumantra, in obedience to Vasistha's words, sent faithful emissaries to different rulers, and himself went to invite some of them. After this, some men engaged in the sacrificial work came and informed Vasistha that they had got everything ready for the sacrifice. At this, saintly Vasistha was greatly pleased and said unto them, I charge you not to give anything disrespectfully to anyone. Anything given in scorn or disrespect destroys the giver as sin. So, whenever you give something to a person, you have to do it with humility and respect. You don't say, hey, take this, you piece of crap. No, that's not the way you do it. You say, please accept this, and Hare Krishna. So there's a way of giving, and there's a way of taking. This is called culture. Culture is the way you do things. If you're a cultured person, you do it. You learn the culture from Ramayana and Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and especially from Sri Chaitanya, from Chaitanya Charitamrita. You learn the culture of transcendence. But if you learn the culture of the demons, you go to school and you say, I don't believe in God. I think we all come from monkeys. Then your whole life you'll be in trouble. Because there's no respect. You learn the culture of the demons. So there's different cultures present in the world. You have to decide which one you're going to follow. We're trying to teach the culture of transcendence in the temple, Krishna consciousness. And this is Krishna conscious. He says, I order you not to give anything disrespectfully to anybody. Anything given in scorn or disrespect destroys the giver as sin. Like, for example, you have the two little brothers that come. What's their names? The twins of Madhava Gauranga. What? Maharati. Narasingha Krishna, yeah. Now, they always fight over things. Like if somebody has, if Maharati has a bottle of shampoo, then, what's his name, Mahashringa? Yeah, Narasingha Krishna, he'll want it also, right? So, then and his father, Madhava Gauranga, says, okay, Maharati, you give to Narasingha Krishna the shampoo bottle. He said, no, give it. Give it. He just goes like, he throws it, right? That's not culture. Culture is, I order you not to give anything disrespectfully to anyone. Anything given in scorn or disrespect destroys the giver as sin. In other words, it's like sin to not give things nicely to people. And you'll get a reaction for acting like that. Now, by the way, the good news is a child is not held responsible for what they do until they reach 14 years old. So, Maharati doing what he's doing, he's not going to be attacked by sin for it. He might be attacked by his brother for it, but not by sin, However, once you get to be 14, you get the sinful reactions. If you haven't learned, and by the way, parents should know, you only have 14 years to train your kids. And because of the internet nowadays, you only have maybe, 6 years or maybe 4 years before the child gets contaminated by outside influences. So you have, a short period of time to train them properly. Right? And if they get trained properly, there's a saying, whatever a child learns in his young years will sustain him throughout life. So if a child learns good culture early on, that'll sustain the child throughout life. Anything given in scorn or disrespect destroys the giver as sin. Then, after 2 or 3 days, the invited kings and princes began to pour in with gems and other rich presents to King Dasharatha. So, they're coming with gifts, and they're going to receive gifts. This is called Dadati Pratigrinanti Guyam Aikyati Pritshati Bhukte Bojayate Chaiva Sadvida Pritilakshanam. There are 6 ways of expressing love: giving and receiving gifts, and then giving and receiving holy prasadam, and then sharing with each other endearing thoughts about Krishna. It's the way you show love to people. If you don't love someone, you don't do that. You don't give them something, they don't give you anything. You don't offer them prasad, they don't offer you prasad. You don't say anything about Krishna, they don't say anything about Krishna. That means there's no love. So, therefore, you have to be, well, now sometimes you meet a person that doesn't know anything, doesn't have transcendental culture, they have asuric or demoniac culture. So, they bring you a hamburger. They say, you want to have a hamburger? And you say, no, I can't accept that. But I thank you for wanting to offer that to me. And I brought something with me. You please take this. This is called a samosa. He said, is there any meat in it? He said, it tastes like meat. Why don't you try it? So as soon as he bites into the samosa, there's no meat, of course, in the samosa. But as soon as he bites into it, he comes into contact with Krishna in the form of prasadam, and he'll be benefited. And you tell him, next time if you want to bring me something, bring me an apple, and I'll accept it. So in other words, you didn't insult him, but you instructed him. And you're not saying, I'll never accept anything from you because you're a dirty karmi. No. You're teaching him what he can bring you that you'll accept. And if he likes you, he'll bring you an apple rather than a hamburger the next time. So that's called respect. You're respecting the person. You're not insulting them. You say, I won't eat your food. You're a nonsense. You don't talk like that. But you say, but if you bring me an apple next time, I will accept it. You know? Okay. So we'll stop right there because I think they're going to open the deities.